You ever notice how pleasure is always sold to us as the prize, like it's the goal, the end game, the whole reason we're doing anything? But what if it's not the reward? What if it's the disguise? Think about it. The chocolate, the scroll, the flirt, the laugh. They all look like joy, but maybe they're just shadows elegantly dressed covering something far more raw, far more ancient, and yeah, far more painful. Let me ask you something. When was the last time you felt truly full? I don't mean full like you just ate a good meal. I mean full in the soul. Full in that quiet, deep way that doesn't crave anything else afterward. No next hit, no next scroll, no next snack, just full. Satisfied, yes. But more than that, whole. It's rare, isn't it? And that's the issue. We're living in an age flooded with pleasure, but we are starving. Carl Jung, he saw it coming. He warned us. He said the things we chase to soothe ourselves, they're usually the very things that keep us stuck, that block the healing we actually need. And today I want to show you something. I want you to see pleasure, really see it through a different lens. Let's start simple. Picture this. You wake up. First thing you do, you check your phone. No reason, no emergency, no joyful message waiting, but still you check, because the habit is stronger than the hunger. You scroll, something makes you smile for like 3 seconds. You chuckle, swipe again, forget the moment even happened. Then another post, then another, and suddenly it's noon. Half the day is gone, but the ache's still there. So maybe you put the phone down and grab a snack, something sweet, or salty, or both. Then comes that familiar feeling you weren't even hungry. You just needed something. But what was it? It wasn't food. It wasn't dopamine either. What you were looking for was silence, a break, a pause in the storm you've never actually been able to name. Jung had a word for this. He said every person has a shadow, a hidden part of us we push away. And pleasure, it's often the tool we use to bury that shadow. Every bite, every scroll, every flirtation that's not really about love. It's not joy. It's anesthesia. Now here's the brutal truth. Most of the pleasure we chase isn't actually pleasure. It's relief. Relief from seeing ourselves too clearly. Relief from that uncomfortable self-awareness. And the cost, it's steep. Because every time we numb ourselves with fake pleasure, we deepen the hunger for something real. And when we don't get it, we assume we're broken. But we're not broken. We're just confused. We've been trained, conditioned to mistake escape for enjoyment. Let's go deeper. Imagine you're 6. You cry. No one hears you. Or worse, they tell you to stop. You learn something in that moment. Pain gets you nowhere. But when you smile, when you act nice, when you distract yourself, people clap. They like you. That reward sticks. You repeat the pattern year after year, and then you're grown. But the pain, it's still there, buried, unspoken. But your pleasures, oh, they're loud, louder than your loneliness, louder than your fear, louder than that little kid inside you still waiting just to be held. Here's something most people never notice. Pleasure has memory. Every time you use it to cover up pain, you're wiring your body to fear stillness. That's why silence feels like punishment. That's why you need music in the shower. Why you freak out if you're not entertained every second. Carl Jung saw this. He wasn't anti-pleasure. He was anti-avoidance. He knew pleasure, when misused, becomes an enemy not of the body but of the soul. And if any of this is hitting a little too close to home, good. That's not weakness, that's awareness. So I'll ask you to do something simple. If you've ever felt guilty after indulging, after one more episode, one more scroll, one more snack you didn't really need, just admit it. Not to shame yourself, but to name what's real. Drop a comment, because you're not alone. And this conversation, it's not about judgment, it's about waking up. Let me show you what the trap looks like. Picture someone wandering through a desert. They're thirsty, desperate, chasing mirages. And every time they think they've found water, it disappears. But they don't stop, because hope tells them the next one might be real. That's what pleasure becomes when it lacks purpose, a mirage. And the irony, the real kind of pleasure, the kind that fills your spirit, it's quiet. It doesn't scream for your attention. It doesn't demand you look. It doesn't numb you. It expands you. It's in a deep, honest conversation. It's in finishing something you were afraid to start. It's in waking up and realizing you no longer need the thing that used to control you. But that kind of pleasure, it takes work, and most of us have forgotten how to crave it. Carl Jung once said, people will do anything, no matter how absurd, to avoid facing their own soul. And pleasure misused is the most beautiful absurdity we've ever invented. Let's rewind one more time. You're a kid. You fall. You cry. It hurts. Someone says, "Don't cry, have a cookie." Or, "Shh, look, a cartoon," and just like that you learn pain is bad, feeling things is bad, but pleasure, that's the solution. So you grow up fluent in that language, fluent in distraction, fluent in the art of hiding your ache behind entertainment. Pleasure becomes your translator. It says, "I'm okay," when really you're falling apart. It dances when you're too exhausted to speak. It smiles while you quietly scream inside. And nobody tells you that every time you do that, every time you replace real emotion with shallow stimulation, you lose intimacy with yourself. You become a stranger to your own soul. Carl Jung said, "When the inner world is ignored, the outer world becomes louder. And what's louder than today's world? The scroll. The buzz, the ping, the binge, the chaos. They scream so we don't have to listen. But listen. To what? To the ache underneath. To the hunger for meaning. To the ache of being unseen. That's what all the noise is covering up. See, pleasure itself isn't evil. It's sacred, but only when it's chosen with presence. When it replaces presence, that's when it becomes poison. Let me ask you again. Ever felt guilty after indulging? Not because you did something terrible, but because something inside you whispered, "That didn't really feed me." That's not guilt. That's your soul telling the truth. Here's where people often get Jung wrong. They think shadow work is about becoming dark or edgy. Nah. It's about looking at those exact moments, the ones where you betray yourself just to feel better, and saying, "I see you. I choose truth this time." Let me give you a story. There was someone who couldn't stop jumping into relationships. They called themselves a hopeless romantic. Said they just loved love. But every time it ended the same. Fast connection, intensity, obsession, crash, repeat. Eventually someone asked them why they kept doing this, and they said, "I just love being in love." But that wasn't true. What they really loved was distraction. Because when they were alone, the silence was unbearable. It was never about romance. It was about escape. And when escape becomes a lifestyle, pleasure stops being sweet. It turns bitter. That story isn't rare. That story is most of us. People who confuse craving with connection, who confuse scrolling with joy, who confuse numbing with healing. The real danger isn't that these pleasures exist. It's that we never stop to ask why we need them. Let's kill a myth right here. Pleasure is not healing. Pleasure is not peace. Pleasure is not power. Pleasure is a tool, that's it. And tools, when misused, can cause damage. Let's flip this. Think of the last time you delayed gratification. You wanted to send that message, "Eat that snack, watch that thing." But you didn't. And afterward you felt proud, peaceful. Why? Because discipline isn't about control. It's about trust. And self-trust, that's the real high. Because when you trust yourself, pleasure doesn't control you anymore. You choose it. Fully, freely, consciously. That's when pleasure becomes beautiful again. Not a drug, not a distraction, a celebration. Now picture this, you walk into a room. No phone, no music, no one else, just you. And instead of anxiety creeping in, instead of that itch to fill the silence, something else happens. You feel home. Not because everything in your life is perfect, not because you've made it, but because for once you're not trying to escape. You're just there, present. And it's enough. That's what Carl Jung meant when he talked about individuation. Becoming whole. Not by pretending you're above it all. Not by grinding your feelings into dust, but by integrating what's been pushed away. By being okay with being alone, with silence, with yourself. That's not some lofty spiritual state. It's simple, but it's hard. It means you can enjoy a good meal without needing it to fix your emotions. It means you can sit in silence without needing a distraction. It means you can laugh, really laugh, without it being some cover-up for how empty you feel. That's the goal. And here's the twist most people miss. You don't get there by chasing more pleasure. You get there by turning down the volume on all the noise and listening to what you are running from. So what does that look like? It looks like pausing right before you reach for the phone and asking, "Wait, what am I avoiding right now?" It looks like letting yourself actually feel lonely for once instead of patching it up with sugar sex or scrolling. It looks like choosing the slow, quiet kind of joy, the kind that takes patience, presence, and effort. Because here's the secret: real pleasure, the kind that actually feeds your soul, is rarely instant. It's not always easy, it's not always sexy, but it's real. Think about it. The best laugh. It's with someone you trust, the best food after a long, meaningful day, the best connection after a conversation that left you seen, not swiped. That's the kind of pleasure no algorithm can serve you. Let's slow down for a second, just breathe. If anything I'm saying has made something stir inside you, good. That discomfort, that recognition, that's not pain, that's awakening. And awakening is quiet, not dramatic, not some huge aha moment. It's a choice, a subtle shift. The choice is this: will I keep numbing myself with temporary highs, or will I finally face the part of me I've been avoiding? Carl Jung believed our neuroses, the things that mess us up, don't come from pain itself. They come from our refusal to deal with what the pain left behind. And pleasure, when used unconsciously, becomes the perfect way to never deal with it. But now that you see that, now that you feel it, what do you want to do? Because this is the crossroads. This is where most people stop. Right here. Where the truth gets sharp. Where it doesn't just sting, it shatters. Because to truly reclaim your life from empty pleasure, you have to admit something no one wants to admit. You've betrayed yourself. Not once, but daily, quietly, subtly, repeatedly. Every time you said just 5 more minutes. Every time you reached for your phone because silence felt scary. Every time you convinced yourself this makes me feel good when deep down you knew it didn't. Not really. But hold up, this isn't about guilt. This isn't about shame. This is about awakening. You're not weak. You're not broken. You were just surviving. Doing what you thought you had to keep the ache away. But now you're ready for more than survival. You're ready to live, because once you see the pattern, once you understand that the pleasure you were chasing wasn't joy, it was sedation, you stop chasing. The party stops hitting the same. The scroll doesn't scratch the itch. The hookup doesn't fill the hole. The sugar doesn't soothe the scream, because the pain wasn't boredom. It was absence, the absence of you. Let me give you a picture to make this real. Imagine your life is a house. Inside you've got this child, this memory, this truth you never wanted to face. But instead of walking through the front door to meet them, you build an entire entertainment system on the lawn. You throw a party outside. Music, snacks, distractions, flashing lights, everything, anything, just so you don't have to go inside and face what's real. That's what unchecked pleasure does. It builds a carnival outside your soul and keeps you from ever stepping inside. But healing, real healing, it's different. It's quieter. It's walking through the noise, opening that door, sitting down with your younger self, looking them in the eyes and saying, I'm here now. You can speak. That's the work Carl Jung talked about. Not becoming addicted to stillness, becoming unafraid of it. Because silence, it isn't empty. It's full of everything you've been running from and everything you've been looking for. Now let's get to the core. The final myth we've got to destroy. You've been told pleasure is the goal, that happiness is feeling good, that freedom means indulging whenever you want. But freedom, real freedom, it's not needing to. That's the difference. That's the shift. Real pleasure is not the chocolate, not the phone, not the hit, not the buzz, not the stroke to your ego. Real pleasure is the moment you realize you don't need to be distracted from yourself anymore. You can sit in stillness and smile. Not because it's empty, but because it's finally full. Full of presence, full of truth, full of peace. And when you reach that place, people notice. They'll say you've changed. They'll say you're quieter, slower. You don't party like you used to. You don't post like you used to. You don't text back immediately anymore. And you'll just smile, because they won't understand. They won't get that you're no longer avoiding anything. You're just here now. And that's the most powerful thing a person can be. Because once you stop needing pleasure to be okay, you become untouchable. Marketing doesn't hypnotize you. Addictions lose their teeth. Desperation disappears. You stop being a puppet pulled by your cravings and become the one who chooses. That's presence. That's power. And it terrifies the world because they can't sell anything to someone who already feels whole. Carl Jung said, "The privilege of a lifetime is to become who you truly are." And who you are is not a dopamine addict. You are not just a bundle of cravings. You are not just a consumer of feelings. You are a creator of meaning, and meaning it doesn't always feel good. It's not a high. It's not a rush. It's difficult, it's deep. It's sometimes lonely, sometimes exhausting, but it's real, and it will feed you in ways that pleasure never could. So next time that urge hits that itch to scroll, to eat, to text, to buy, don't fight it. Don't shame it. Just pause and ask, what do I really need right now? That question, it's everything. That question breaks the loop. It brings you back. It puts you in charge again. It reminds you you're not your hunger. You are the one who chooses how to feed it. So here we are. You've seen the mask start to slip. You've heard the truth most people never dare to say out loud. And maybe, just maybe, you felt that tremble inside. The kind that tells you something deep just got touched. And now comes the part that's the hardest. It's the moment where realization becomes responsibility. Because once you see it, once you feel it, you can't go back to pretending. Not really. Not without it gnawing at you. The truth is simple but brutal. Most of us have lived our lives trying to be comfortable, not conscious. Chasing whatever numbs the noise. Reaching for whatever helps us forget, even if only for a second. And that means we've betrayed ourselves. Not in some big, dramatic, tragic way. No, in tiny daily betrayals, in habits that seemed harmless, in those quiet moments where we felt the ache, the emptiness, and chose distraction instead of depth. But if you're still here, still listening, still breathing through this with me, then hear this. That betrayal, it doesn't have to define you. It can wake you. You didn't numb yourself because you're weak. You didn't scroll for hours because you're broken. You didn't eat the thing or sleep with the person or binge the show because you're flawed. You did it because you were surviving. But survival is not the same as living. And now you're ready to live. You're ready to meet the silence not as an enemy but as an invitation. You're ready to see that the craving wasn't for sugar or stimulation or validation, but for something real, something raw, something honest. You. That's the root of this whole thing. Pleasure isn't evil. It's just been misunderstood, misused, overprescribed, and under-questioned. It was never the problem. Our relationship to it was. Because real pleasure, the kind that lasts, the kind that deepens you, it doesn't control you. It doesn't own you. It doesn't beg you to come back again and again. It waits. And when you're ready, it welcomes you home. So here's what you can do. Not tomorrow, not next week, right now. Start small, subtle. Next time you're about to grab your phone for no reason, pause. Next time you open the fridge when you're not really hungry, pause. Next time you go to reply to that text you know you shouldn't, pause. Not to punish yourself, not to shame yourself, but to ask, what am I really seeking right now? That moment of pause, it's not weakness, it's power. Because that's the moment you reclaim your agency. That's when you go from reacting to choosing, from surviving to responding, from numbing to awakening. And the more you do it, the more you flex that muscle, the more everything starts to shift. You'll notice your cravings lose their grip. Your silence becomes sacred. Your joy becomes real again, not performative, not fleeting. You'll laugh more easily, not because you're distracting yourself, but because you actually feel light. You'll cry more freely too, because you're no longer scared of your emotions. You've stopped silencing them. And you'll feel more, period. That's the cost and the reward of real presence. It's not always easy, but it's always worth it. Because when you're present, truly present, your life stops being a loop. It starts being a path, a direction, a journey with depth. Carl Jung didn't want us to become saints or sages. He wanted us to become whole. He wanted us to integrate, not escape. To look at the shadow and say, I see you. You're part of me, but you don't get to run the show anymore. To look at pleasure and say, you're welcome here, but only when you serve truth, not when you cover it. That's real strength. That's real maturity. And it's rare. Because most people are still lost in the chase, lost in the scroll, lost in the noise. But you've started listening, and that changes everything. It won't be perfect. You'll still have moments of weakness. You'll still slip back into old patterns sometimes. That's okay. The point isn't to become pure. The point is to become aware, to wake up a little more each day, to question a little more each urge, to love yourself a little more even when you fall short. Because healing doesn't look like perfection. It looks like honesty. It looks like saying I wanted the quick hit, but I chose to breathe instead. It looks like saying I was about to disappear into distraction, but I turned inward instead. It looks like walking into that metaphorical house where your younger self still waits and saying, I know I've been gone, but I'm here now, and I'm listening. That's the work, that's the way. And as you do it slowly, steadily, you'll begin to notice something beautiful. You don't crave the same things. The noise gets quieter, the itch gets duller, and the peace gets louder. It starts to grow, to take up space, to settle in your bones. And one day you'll sit in a quiet room with no distractions, no dopamine, no entertainment, and instead of feeling panic, you'll feel peace. Instead of restlessness, you'll feel rooted. Instead of reaching for something outside yourself, you'll realize, I already have what I was looking for, me. This is what Jung meant by becoming who you truly are. Not a persona, not a performer, not a consumer, but a creator of meaning. And meaning is heavy. It's inconvenient. It demands more than you want to give sometimes, but it feeds you in a way nothing else can. So the next time you feel that pull, that sudden mindless urge for comfort, don't shut it down. Don't shame it. Just ask, is this feeding me or just filling the gap? That question changes lives. That question hands the power back to you. Because the truth is, you are not your cravings. You are not your habits. You are not your impulses. You are the one who notices them, questions them, and chooses what to do next. And that is freedom. Real freedom. The kind you don't need to buy, earn, or chase. The kind that doesn't come from pleasure, but from presence. So from this moment forward, let the sweetness of life come. Not from what you consume, but from what you consciously welcome. Laugh, love, rest, scroll, eat, enjoy. But do it from a place of wholeness. Do it because you want to, not because you need to. And when people ask why you've changed, when they wonder why you move slower, speak deeper, live quieter, you can tell them, I'm not avoiding anything anymore, I'm just here now. And that's everything. That's the beginning of a life where pleasure is sacred again, not because it saves you, but because you no longer need it to. You are no longer chasing the high, you're carrying the peace. And that is the kind of person the world can't control, the kind of person Jung believed we all could become. Not a seeker of sedation, but a servant of truth. Not a slave to pleasure, but a steward of meaning. And that journey, it begins right here, with one simple pause, and the courage to ask, what do I really need right now? That's the question. That's the loop breaker. That's the beginning of everything.